Just because she was ugly, no one wanted her. So the woman put on heavy makeup and walked into the supermarket at 6 o'clock in the morning. But she didn't really come to buy books, but wanted to meet her true love. Because Annie always believed that a man who could get up early to buy vegetables must be a family-oriented and trustworthy person. At this moment, the man who was picking fruits in front of her broke into her sight. The long-lost throbbing suddenly surged in her heart, making Annie intoxicated with it. So she decided to be brave for her love, took a deep breath, calmed her panicked thoughts, and then pulled up the shopping cart beside her and walked lightly to the man.
I like mine firm and juicy.
And no bruises.
So what are you looking for?
Like super fresh, you know?
So do you have a wife and kids to help you eat your food?
Me, no.
No?
I don't know.
Me neither.
I neither was such a straightforward conversation, which made John startled. After all, he had never met such a special and active woman. However, Anina's unique temperament, as well as the confidence and calmness in her words, still made John feel an indescribable emotion.
Where are we going?
Anywhere. You?
Really?
Yes.
They walked out of the supermarket side by side. Then they came to a coffee shop full of romance, accompanied by the ambiguous atmosphere around them. Anina's smart eyes also quietly turned into John's heart at this moment. They were like two stars, just right in the endless universe. So, on the eve of their separation, the two made an unspoken agreement to meet on Thursday. With John's departure, the warmth just now gradually dissipated, but the quietly growing feelings spread like a tide in Anina's heart. At this moment, it seemed as if the whole world was dancing for him, and even the air was filled with gentle sweetness. For him, this was undoubtedly a perfect encounter, and came to work with great joy, and could not wait to tell her best friend about it. Although Emma was happy about Anne's encounter, she could not help but stop when she stood up to leave.
HR asked me to mention to you, you missed like 4 days out of 20.
But and did not care, thinking that she was outstanding and her boss would never fire her easily. After a busy day, and returned home with a brisk pace. He slowly poured the peaches he bought into the plate. That was the witness of his love with John. But when he took off his coat and his eyes fell on this gloomy and small room, an indescribable sense of oppression suddenly attacked his heart. The messy furniture and piled up sundries seemed to be silently telling a kind of uneasiness, and was solemnly in place, her thoughts gradually. She was unable to swallow it, and the expectation that had lingered in her heart also dissipated unconsciously. He dragged his tired body to the bed, and the whole person seemed to fall into a silent vortex. Time passed silently. The world outside the house was still noisy, and the peach on the plate was unconsciously covered with a layer of fatigue. After an unknown period of time, Annie was awakened by the ringing of the mobile phone. He slowly answered the phone. John's gentle voice came from the other end of the receiver. Annie realized that today was the Thursday they agreed to meet, but the expectation and longing had now become dim. Although John felt very much about Annie's indifferent attitude, but he still came to Annie's house downstairs as promised. But Annie at this time looked decadent and had no livelihood. Seeing the awkward atmosphere, John hurriedly took out the wooden peach he carved from his pocket, trying to relieve the boredom between the two. But Annie's face was like a pool of stagnant water, without any ripples. The joy of the first meeting had long gone.
So, where do you want to go?
I don't care, just somewhere casual.
The two of them came to a restaurant together, looking at John's affectionate eyes, and had to squeeze out a smile.
You don't have a twin, by any chance?
Oh.
But John still couldn't believe that after only a few days, the touching glow on Anne's face was no longer there, accompanied by the embarrassment in their hearts. This date was like a tender night that had just emerged from the branches. Before it had time to embrace the sunshine, it was blown down by a silent wind. As the moonlight slowly drowned their parting steps, John gradually realized that his gentleness was redundant. He whispered that he shouldn't continue to bother and would never meet him again.
No, it's not that. I'm sick, and I don't really feel up so much.
Why you say that earlier?
After saying goodbye to Annie, John still disappeared in the neon lights with a little loneliness. Annie was not the common flu, but his bipolar disorder that he had suffered for many years. As early as Annie's high school, his world seemed to be divided by an invisible sharp blade. Half of him was high-spirited and tried to show the most perfect appearance in front of others, while the other half was immersed in endless darkness and was torn apart by inexplicable emotions. Although he always devoted himself to work and socializing with the greatest enthusiasm, those sudden lows would still drag him into the abyss, leaving him in a corner unknown to anyone, bearing the inner torment alone. And even her closest parents did not know about her struggle. She was afraid of being looked at differently, and even more afraid of being difficult to get along with in the eyes of others. Because of this, there were very few close friends around her, and no company was willing to take him in for a long time. 2.5 days later, the morning light knocked on the curtains and woke, and he was sleeping soundly. At this moment, he was full of expectations for life. He opened the curtains and couldn't wait to embrace all the good things. It was at this time that he remembered the long-stranded fate, the nicest man in the world, for the loveliest smile and all the potential in life and the promise one single human, and searched on the sofa for a long time and finally found the mobile phone left in the corner. He then called John with great anticipation. At this moment, John was still immersed in his sleep. Seeing that it was and calling, John answered without hesitation. At this time, and tried her best to meet him, and her detached emotions surprised John, although the encounter that night made him a little overwhelmed. But at this moment, Anne's sweet voice revealed a hint of irresistible magic, which gradually loosened her originally hesitant heart. Gier agreed to Anne's date request tonight.
Okay, bye.
At this moment, the midnight date once again became her dream that she had been looking forward to. She put on gorgeous clothes and wandered in this familiar street. She spent almost a day buying food and flowers and even bought detergent, want to get rid of the long-lasting smell in a room and bring it to the thick night fog like an indissoluble green fog. This once extremely dirty and messy little home was kept in order by Anne. But just as he came to the dressing table, the inexplicable sadness, but inappropriately, flooded into Anne's mind again. He tried his best to call for the light in his heart, but all the struggles seemed so futile at this moment, just letting the inner grief sweep away Anne's fragile heart. The doorbell rang again and again, but he seemed to be trapped in an invisible cage. His feet were too heavy to take a step. He could only slowly slide to the ground, letting the tears flow quietly, blurring everything in front of him and washing away the bitterness and helplessness in his heart. At this time, John stood quietly in the cold wind. Honey penetrated through his clothes. But compared to this cold night, his heart seemed to be crushed mercilessly.
If I came clean that time in the supermarket and said, oh, by the way, I'm bipolar. I'm dealing with it. Will you?
But in the end, John still smiled indifferently, turned around and disappeared in the thick night, while on the other side, could only let her tears soak in. At this moment, he also truly felt that he might never be able to touch this certainty and deep affection. Not long after, and was fired by her boss for long-term absence from work, but Emma called her at this moment. Looking at Anne's drooping eyes, Emma's heart sank suddenly. She had never seen and so lonely. The once bright smile had now faded into a pale shadow. So Emma did not hesitate. I brought Annie to the coffee shop, hoping to find the key to his heart in this warm atmosphere. And Annie did not hesitate to tell her story about her illness.
I'm bipolar.
Really?
Yes, I have been since I was 15.
How come you never told me?
Well, who wants to hire someone with a mental illness and entertainment law? Aren't we crazy enough?
Sorry. So why are you telling me now?
Because you're more than work, and you should know what you're dealing with if we're gonna see each other outside of the office. I am impossible to be around. In fact, in some ways, I'm probably the worst friend you could ever have. Don't check a single box.
I have a meeting 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
Phyllis, those guys from admin in my office, tell them we have to cancel today. I'll see them tomorrow. You want to get lunch? Mm-hmm. Get a menu.
You're the first person I've ever told about this.
I'm so glad you've told me. It explains so much. If anything, not knowing made it a little difficult to connect with you fully.
In Emma's sincere eyes, and gradually found what she had been missing, the courage to face the face. She no longer escaped, no longer bound by the shadow of the past, but chose to bravely feel and accept, but believe that she was worthy of being loved. He also plucked up the courage to open his heart to those friends who had been alienated by his illness. After learning about Anne's illness, those friends did not show any alienation, but showed more sincere concern for Anne, with the encouragement of her friends, and also found a professional doctor and treated her illness more effectively. Although it could not be cured, his mental state gradually recovered like the sky after the haze was dissipated.